Hello, professionally integrated. I just want to do a real quick video webinar for all of you of things that I've learned with testifying over 50 times in court for patients that were injured in motor vehicle crashes. So I just made a quick little PowerPoint that I just want to show you all that you can have because I think some of this is pretty important. Kind of in a laid back holiday attire right now, but this is some information I just want you to have to sit back uh, and watch. So I hope you're relaxed too. So let's just get on with this here. Boom, 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 and boom. So what have I learned in testifying in over 50 jury trials for injured patients? Now, this is all brought to you by professionallyintegrated.com, where it only costs less than one patient visit to join. We want to give you more than any other site service around to help you be the best chiropractor that you can be. So let me just show you a little bit here. So insurance companies do not really want you to learn. Okay, they don't want to learn what you have to say. They will always hire an independent medical evaluator to argue everything, right? So even when you have the knowledge and the information and you give it to the insurance medical evaluator, they're not there to be like, wow, this really makes sense. No, they're there to say, I'm getting paid way more money to do this type of job than I would if I was treating patients. And I know they want me to argue and create doubt. And they're going to do that whether it's from your diagnosis, whether they say the diagnosis is incorrect, the diagnosis doesn't exist, the diagnosis is from something else, causation, everything. They don't want to learn. It's not like we're going in and we're talking doctor to doctor and you're trying to do a differential diagnosis. The insurance company and the independent medical evaluators don't want to learn any of this. And I just did a video on professionally integrated.com where I break down what IMEs do. And I even have a lot of information on the site where I go over actual trial transcripts where I either rebutted an IME and show you what they actually say about patients that are injured and crashes. Your notes matter. They really make a difference. If your notes look something like this, don't really expect to get your bills completely paid for or be able to fight for what your patient needs. On the site, we have tons of information. If you just type in SOAP, you're going to see SOAP note tutorial, good notes, good notes, bad notes, how to take better notes, how to even do appropriate consultations to initial evaluations, to specific initial evaluations, and how to use that information to document in your notes to show what it is that you're doing and why. So if you do get questioned in court, you are held to the four corners of your notes, and your notes need to reflect your knowledge. That's something that professionallyintegrated.com does that everywhere else doesn't. Everywhere else kind of sells you some scripts. Here's little things to say. But what does the science say about these spinal subluxations? What does the science say about your treatment? What does the science say about what happens if those spinal pathologies stay there? And is there evidence that your care can improve it? We have all that on professionallyintegrated.com to educate patients on the importance of your care and what these findings actually mean. And when you're in court, that is what you have to go off of. Not having any research in your notes or just having simple little macros that you constantly use. If you have nothing in your notes to validate what the injuries mean, then you really can't explain why these are real injuries. So make sure that your notes have supporting documentation, supporting research, supporting guidelines, and not just simple little value drivers that some people talk about that are little macros. Understand what this means. Understand what your documentation shows. When you use professionallyintegrated.com, not only you're communicating better, because you understand what it is that you're trying to discuss. You're using research. You've listened to the videos that are on there, the hundreds of articles that are on there with videos and breakdowns. So now you know you're becoming a better doctor. So you can take specific aspects of research and guidelines to support the injuries in your treatment. Or you're just using a quick little macro, hey, a study mentioned this, but you never even looked at the study. You don't even know what it means, and they're going to ask you about that. And you want to be able to discuss what it is. And again, if you just use the macros and you don't know the full story of what that paper is, it's like a script. Someone has given you a small script. You're going to be able to talk about it in the shallow end. But if someone asks you a couple of questions and drags you in the deep end, you're going to drown. You want to be able to get in the deep end. You want to be able to explain your knowledge. You want to be able to explain the research. You want to be able to show why what you did is important. And again, here's a simple site on uh, professionally integrated. Look at all, this is just one page of hundreds about upper cervical instability, how instability can affect the nervous system, how imaging, all of this is right there for you to learn and quickly be able to put in your notes. And more importantly, educate your patients and educate yourself so that you can improve them so that they can get better. Just using impairment ratings, right? I see this all the time. Oh, well, it's instability. There's a 25 to 28% impairment rating. Who cares? What does that mean? Talk about what that really means. Some of these quote unquote PI gurus that you're paying tens of thousands or thousands of dollars to teach you these macros and telling you to use an impairment rating on a flexion extension, they're not, they don't practice. They're not going to be asked about this. But you want to be able to explain if you do give an impairment rating, how is it impairing that patient? Or more importantly, before just an impairment rating, what do these injuries mean? How is it impairing your patient? The 50 something times I've been to court, I almost never discussed impairment ratings. I discussed each individual pathology and how it seems to be impairing my patient's quality of life with the research to support that, to validate it, to show why that this person can't do certain activities of daily living, why it affects them, but why my treatment can help them and minimize their impairment. Discuss why is this pathology an issue? I've asked so many docs that go to these quote unquote PI groups and they say, oh, they have a 25% impairment rating. It's according to the AMA guideline, DRE, it's a 25 to 28%. And they, okay, well, why? Why is that an impairment rating? Well, because it's a permanent injury. Well, what is it doing? How is it affecting your patient? That telling that X-ray with instability on just flexion extension is an impairment rating based on the Fifth Amendment or the guidelines, AMA guidelines, the fifth edition. It's a script. But if I were to ask you further, explain to me what this pathology is. I don't see any of this in your notes. But on professionallyintegrated.com, we have tons of articles and research articles. Even me, as associated with Professionally Integrated, has published papers on instability and crashes and how it can affect patients, how it can affect their central nervous system, their peripheral nervous system, their discs, their joints, and how causation can lead, the crashes can actually cause that. Your notes need to reflect that. It's the same thing with AOMSI. They have AOMSI. It's AOMSI. Okay, that's not detailed. Explain to your patient and make sure that your notes reflect what does this actual instability mean? And again, I have on here, AMSI is really just a legal term. I have webinars and videos on this. I have information and research about how I discuss instability, how I have it in their notes, and how this instability may affect this particular person. How you found it, what does it mean, and what is your treatment doing to help? The other thing that I've seen is that giving a lame diagnosis will not help your patient. And what I mean by that is I've seen so many of your notes, and then you're arguing or complaining why you're not being paid in full. And a lot of it is because you gave this really kind of lame diagnosis with no follow-up. A sprained strain. Look, sprained strains can happen, but most sprained strains are going to be self-resolving. So if you're just diagnosing sprained strain for 200 visits and the patient hasn't improved, either the patient's maybe malingering or you missed or underdiagnosed it. Headache, sure. Headaches are terrible. Why do they have a headache? What is the headache from? Use that diagnosis. And again, on Professionally Integrated, I have tons of webinars where we go over appropriate diagnosis, how to diagnose, what diagnosis is in your notes, these things that specifically relate to patients and patient care and patient outcome. Using car accident as opposed to car crash, appropriate terminology. I also think another thing that I've seen is, giving a diagnosis and then not addressing it. I've seen tons of docs diagnose kyphosis and, loss of curve and instability. But then none of the care has ever been shown to actually affect it or change it. How do you expect to say, hey, my treatment was reasonable and necessary. This is a significant, horrible pathology, but I didn't make any improvements to it? So you're giving tons of care and no real change. How do you validate that? There's ways that you can to a degree, but if you're going to diagnose a pathology that's such a problem, shouldn't you be addressing it? Also, I've seen this. How you advertise or the groups that you've joined and how they advertise, it matters. If you advertise like this, or you join a group that advertises like this to do personal injury, get paid an extra 6 figures on personal injury alone. What diagnosis to use and how to easily document macros to get more money. They're going to throw that in your face on the stand. So, doc, you mentioned here to use macros to increase money. So the macros that are in your notes, you did it to increase more money. Are you part of this group? You see how they're going to use that? The new magic demonstrative language is the puzzle. Hey, doc, you're paying this company, this group to teach you personal injury, correct? So do any of your notes, is that the magic demonstrative language that you use as a puzzle to make more money and these simple little macros? They're going to ask you this, right? They're not there to learn. They're there to destroy your credibility. And if your credibility relies on scripts and relies on quick little magic buttons to make money, as opposed to improving the outcome of your patient, they're going to ask you about it. And how are you going to answer that? Oh, well, the macros are there for money. Like that's your marketing group. That's what you relied upon. On the site, I have on here marketing no-nos. I talk about that. How educational and communication in marketing, how to get more referrals with better communication. Why isn't your practice getting more referrals? We have webinars on here to discuss this, to use the science, to increase our knowledge of these spinal pathologies, i.e. subluxations, so that you don't have to use a script. You understand what the science and research and literature is so that you can go forward and you can speak with confidence. You don't care if someone gets you off script because there is no script. It's your knowledge and information and the information that you're using on Professionally Integrated to explain and document and educate why this is wrong. And then why these pathologies are wrong. And then you can explain it and validate your treatment. Look, we're here to be healthcare providers, not personal injury docs. I don't even know what that means. Understand what these pathologies are. Understand how it's affecting your patient. Understand how to improve them and understand what some of these physiological outcomes may be if they are there. So I hope that gave you some information. And now we're going to get into insurance lawyers. Look, insurance lawyers, defense lawyers, lawyers that are working for the insurance company, they're rarely going to ask. They've rarely asked me about the injuries. Why? Because what do they want me to do? Continue to talk about loss of curve and instability? They rarely ask me about that, which is super weird. I thought the whole point of going to court was to discuss these injuries. They bring up a lot of different things, like whether it's pre-existing or predisposing. And again, you need to know the terminology of that, and that's on this site. They're going to try to ruin your character, right? They're going to ask you about your marketing. They're going to ask you about your ads. They're going to ask you about stuff that's on your website. They're going to ask you about anything in your life because they want to try to create doubt. And as opposed to talking about the science and the literature and my notes and my treatment, they're going to try to go after character, which is shocking in one hand, but I understand because when we look at the pathologies and we look at what the science tells us about people in crashes, and if you could objectively document. I don't know how they can argue the injuries. They might argue where the injuries came from, and that's fine. We can talk about that. And your notes should reflect how you came to that conclusion. And a lot of these defense lawyers, they are educated on the science of crashes from the IMEs. So they're used to reading and relying on what insurance medical evaluators say when they say people aren't really hurt. So that's what they know. So they're going to try to challenge me on my understanding of loss of curve and research when all they think is that it's a self-resolving soft tissue injury that gets better in 6 to 12 weeks. Okay, we could talk about that. And again, on my site, we have online webinars that is included with all of your memberships. So you could look at like, here's one I just did, misused research that IMEs use, what insurance evaluators get wrong. State Farm ignored the injuries. We went over the actual trial transcripts of going into court. All these things to show you what they say, to show you what they're going to ask. What about patients' lawyers? Well, many are just going to settle super quick, right? You see the big billboards and the TV ads. A lot of those lawyers, not all of them, they never go to court. So they're just going to settle with their paralegals. They're never going to ask. The science matters as little to them as it does to the defense lawyers. But then there's some that really do know the science and they're going to fight for it. You have to decide if you want to work with one or the other or none, right? Look, for me, when I treat a personal injury patient, one of the things that I hate is I have to argue why I'm treating a person. I have to argue why this patient kept coming back because the patient was getting better. And now I have to argue it. That's annoying. So if there's a lawyer that has to defend my patient or fight for my patient, and they don't take the time to reach out or understand these injuries, that's annoying as well. Again, on professionallyintegrated.com, one of my buddies, Mike Maddox, he mentioned this, and I may have messed up the word a little bit, but he was like, look, a lot of docs care more about patient incomes, and a lot of docs care more about doctor's income. And I was like, wow. And we were talking, he's like, yeah, some docs only care about income and some docs care about outcome. So be on professionallyintegrated.com, be the doc that cares about patient outcomes, giving an appropriate diagnosis, giving an appropriate treatment plan, getting them better. That is ultimately the point of professionally integrated, increasing your knowledge, your understanding, your confidence. I could teach you, and I have on here, how to do consultations, initial evaluations, everything up to trial. Am I going to teach you a script to learn? No. Why? Well, sell me on a script. Any of you, and I've done this before, no one has ever taken me up on it. I challenge you in a great way. If you use a script, a simple script, I want you to sell me your care. And I'm going to give you multiple scenarios. How can you fit the human anatomy and physiology into one script? There's a lot of different spinal subluxations that can lead to a lot of different outcomes and a lot of different problems. So professionally integrated is going to give you the knowledge to objectively explain how you came up with your diagnosis and treatment plan so that you can validate and your notes reflect your knowledge, not your sales tactics. This is not about sales. There's a bunch of other people out there that are just going to teach you sales. Professionally integrated is here to try to teach you how to be a better, more informed, educated doc. And again, it's a great resource for patient outcomes. What happens if this pathology stays? What happens if we improve it? Can we improve it? Can you show you improved it? Those are the great things about it. And again, just hop on professionally integrated, hop onto our network with other docs that are on there, and join. Start to use the science to increase your understanding and knowledge. And you're going to see how much better of a provider you are, and then how that's going to change your practice for the better, where patients are looking for answers because everyone else has just sold them a script, given them a value driver diagnosis, and not really put forth the time and energy. So if you have any questions, reach out, and I hope that was informative. And this is some stuff that I've learned with testifying, not even complete depositions and stuff, but going to court probably over 50 times for patients that are injured, and what I've learned. So I hope that you found this informative and reach out with any questions. If any of you have questions about should you join this site for less than one patient visit, send me an IM. I'd be more than happy to give you a private tour on Zoom to show you how you can use this on every patient that's coming to seek help for different types of spinal problems. I don't care if it's a car crash or not. Does this patient have a spinal problem and can you help them? And what do these spinal conditions and subluxations mean? And then all the resources are right there on professionally integrated for you to use to make you a better healthcare provider. Thanks so much. See you real soon.